just before we start building our polyfill, you need to understand what it is we're building. And in order to understand what it is we're building, obviously we need to understand what the forEach method is meant to accomplish. At its core, a forEach method is just a way to loop through your array. And ES6 introduced the array forEach method. What you do is you call this method on your array, and when you do, you have to pass in a callback function to run on each iteration of the loop. And just in case you're wondering, a callback is just a function that is only executed after another function has finished executing, hence the word callback. Okay, so we know the forEach method requires us to pass in a callback function, and this callback function accepts two main arguments. Well, actually it accepts three arguments, but the third argument is an array that you're wanting to iterate through, so I've never had to use it. So I'm just going to concentrate on the two main arguments that you pass into this callback function. The first is the value of the current item in the loop, and the second is the index of that item. And you can name these variables anything you want. That is what the callback function is going to take, and we're going to have to build this dynamically from the beginning, which you'll see in a moment. And just taking a step back, just remember that the forEach method is a method applied to the array prototype. We saw this when we had to see whether it's natively supported. We accessed the array prototype forEach method. And forEach is just a way for us to loop through an array. And JavaScript is a very curious beast because there are so many different ways to accomplish the same task. And it's also awesome like that because as developers, it gives us a lot of flexibility to use what we think is best. What this means is that the forEach method is not just the only method we can use to loop through arrays. We've also got the for method. We've got forIn, we've got forOf, and we've even got others. But the forEach method does come with a little caveat. It only works on arrays. So if you actually want to count, or you're wanting to access loops on an object, then the forEach probably isn't going to be your friend. And the other thing with forEach is that some developers argue that it suffers performance issues, aka it's slow. And if this is a concern to you, then you can get around it. You can use libraries like Lodash. And I don't want us to get into Lodash now, but it's basically just a utility library in JavaScript that lets us do a lot of common things, such as looping through arrays. And the code's written in a way that's very, very efficient, performance efficient, very fast. Okay, well, if you're anything like me, reading a bunch of words on a screen isn't really helping to understand what a forEach is. So before we start building our polyfill, let me just show you what a forEach is by showing you an example, and then we can dive straight into it by building our very own polyfill. Let's just look at a quick example.